Hi, my name's Kevin Hicks. Welcome to my YouTube channel, The History Squad. Now today's video is about the Battle of Shrewsbury, 21st of July 1403. It's part of our 100 Years' War series. We've included it in that series because it's pivotal. If you've missed any of our previous episodes about this subject, you'll find a link in the description. Now, this Battle of Shrewsbury, it wasn't just a battle. There's one heck of a lead up. It's a complicated issue, so stand by. So we start off with our king. There he is, Richard II. He started off all well, but he became distrustful. He actually reigned from 1377 to 1399 when he was deposed. The problem he had was he just didn't trust these noblemen. Now there's a surprise. So he became a bit of a tyrant and surrounded himself with his favourites. He also had a bodyguard of some 2,000 bowmen from Cheshire, his beloved county of Cheshire. Each one of those bowmen was actually given a livery badge of the White Hart of the king. So they belonged to the king, and boy were they loyal to Richard II. Now the noblemen around the country got more and more distrustful of this tyrannical king. 1387 to 1388, the Lord Appellant Rising, when the Lords basically rose up against the king and forced him to change his favourites in court. So the king is forced to do so. However, 1397, he regains his strength, and one by one he has those who rose up against him arrested and ruined. Now one of those was the grandson of King Edward III of England, Henry Bolingbroke. He was exiled for 10 years. Revenge. And then in 1399, Henry Bolingbroke's father, John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster, dies. So the king extends Henry's exile to life. He's gone. And he then seizes all of the land and chattels of the Duke of Lancaster. This move of a tyrant, is treachery. But what it will do is it will set our Henry on the course of his enemy. So what happens now is really exciting. You see, the king, Richard II, he's off to Ireland on campaign. This gives Henry Bolingbroke the opportunity to return from exile in France. He lands at Ravenspur, July 1399 in Yorkshire, and he is met by none other than Henry Percy, the Earl of Northumberland, and his son, the famous Hotspur. He is surrounded by Lancastrian knights. They greet him, and in no time at all, there is knights rallying to the cause of Henry Bolingbroke. Meanwhile, Richard II, the king, returns from Ireland, but his support is evaporating. So he takes refuge in Conway Castle in North Wales, but he is guaranteed safety by Henry Percy, the Earl of Northumberland. So he leaves the castle and he's ambushed and captured and conveyed down to the Tower of London. This is the beginning of the end for Richard II, King of England. So Richard II, the anointed King of England, is denounced on the 1st of October 1399. This is a long and complicated story, and I must emphasise that if it wasn't for the power and the support of the Earl of Northumberland, the Percy family, I doubt if Henry Bolingbroke will have ever been crowned King of England. He was crowned Henry IV just 2 weeks after Richard II was denounced. What happens to Richard now is sad. He ends up in Pontefract Castle. The poor king was pretty much just sealed up. Apparently he is starved to death. Now, he died on the 14th of February 1400. What an incredibly sad end. So, Henry Bolingbroke is now the anointed King of England. He is Henry IV. And because of what they did, Henry Percy, the Earl of Northumberland, his son Hotspur, and here we have Thomas Percy, Earl of Worcester. They have rewards heaped upon them, not just financial, land, title, land in Wales, Monabere Castle, Anglesey. There's all these different places that they now have. And the king is grateful, and all should have been fine, except for greed, jealousy, because the king also rewarded Ralph Neville with title. The problem with that is the Nevilles were the rivals of the Percy family, so their nose is slightly out of joint. Then on top of that, the Percys win the Battle of Homildon Hill, capturing the Scots leader, Archibald Douglas. He is now their prisoner. Now, the Earl of Dunbar, George Dunbar, was actually one of the masterminds behind that victory at Homildon Hill. He, though, is against Douglas. What happens now is pivotal, because the Percys refuse to hand over Douglas for ransom. This is going to be a problem. Meanwhile, there is a rebellion in Wales. You have Owain Glyndŵr. He captures Edmund Mortimer, who happens to be in the line that has rights to the crown of England. Also, they are related to the Percy family. Owain Glyndŵr simply says, "You can have him back, just ransom him." And the Percys apply to the king to have their relative, by marriage, returned to them for ransom, and the king goes, no, because the best place for Edmund Mortimer to be is in captivity as far as the king is concerned. And Owain Glyndŵr does a brilliant trick. He marries Mortimer to his daughter. They are now in-laws and joined. This whole business is building until the final bit of insult. Along comes Henry, Prince of Wales. He and his advisors are given Welsh commands, which did actually belong to Hotspur and, have I got him here? Yes, Thomas Percy, Earl of Worcester. They now lose their Welsh commands. Noses are well and truly put out of joint. So, October 1402, there is a meeting between the king, Henry IV, and none other than the famous Henry Hotspur, the hot-blooded knight, the son of the Earl of Northumberland. This meeting is heated. It becomes an argument. It's over Archibald, Earl of Douglas, about the ransom. And it is said that the king drew his dagger and called Henry Hotspur traitor. Henry Hotspur, though, replies, not here on the field of battle. Now, we don't know if that's true. But what we do know is in July 1403, Henry Hotspur appears in Chester, the city of Chester there in Cheshire, with an army. And he proclaims a general uprising against Henry IV and his Lancastrian government. So it's begun. Let's move on to the Battle of Shrewsbury. So, two enormous armies, one coming from the north, the other coming from the south. We don't know for sure how many men were in each army. I've read a few different accounts. Some say there were 14,000 men in each army. Some that there were 10,000 in the king's, 8,000 in Henry Hotspur's army. So, let's just rest assured they were quite large armies. But how come they met at Shrewsbury, right in the west of the Midlands of England? I've got a map, may help to explain it. So here we have me map, Scotland, England, Wales. And it's interesting because if you look at April 1403, Henry Hotspur with his army is about here, laying siege to the Tower of Cocklaw near Hawick. Now this is in response to the king, who's down in London, having granted the earldom of Douglas to the Percy family, and they are there trying to claim it. So the Percys are here in that April. They move south to Lancaster, and then by the 9th of July they're in Chester and proclaiming an uprising against the king. Now, one thing I did learn was there was supposed to be a relieving army coming into Cocklaw, and that Hotspur and his army simply moved away. I don't buy this. I reckon that this is a long time in the planning, this uprising. Meanwhile, the king is coming north with his army to aid the Percys in their conquest of the earldom of Douglas. Or is this a lure? Is it a trap to bring the king north? However, come Nottingham, the king learns of the betrayal. He moves west through Lichfield and on to Shrewsbury, where the two armies meet. This is more than just an accidental clash. The Percys are bringing the king to battle. What they have with them is thousands of those Cheshire and Welsh bowmen. This is going to be a fight and a half. So, as you can see, I've been very busy. I've made another model. In fact, that's why I've been so long in making another medieval film. It's because I've been painting and assembling soldiers. So this is the Battle of Shrewsbury in miniature. I haven't got 28,000 men. I've got a few hundred. Henry Hotspur has his men arrayed just on a rise, you would call it. But it's a pea field, and I love this. A field full of peas. And what he's got his men to do is intertwine them, all the tendrils of the plants of the peas. He says so that will trip any advancing army. Now, when they do arrive on the battlefield, they're reluctant to engage in combat. They're on negotiations, and they go on all afternoon to the point where the men themselves are ready to go. They're ready to have a fight. And it's about 2 hours before dusk when the king's army starts their advance up the hill. But waiting for them are the famed bowmen of Flint and Cheshire, those English and Welsh bowmen. They were the elite, and they had an axe to grind. Don't forget, it was those bowmen who were the personal bowmen of Richard II. So there is definitely an edge to this battlefield. But another thing is, they reckon there was anything up to 4,000 bowmen on each side. So if each bowman could loose approximately 10 arrows per minute, that's collectively 40 to 50,000 arrows from each side. And this is where we get the saying, an arrow storm. In fact, when the bowmen let fly, an eyewitness said the men fell like leaves in autumn after a hoarfrost. It must have been devastating. Now, on the king's right flank, the Earl of Stafford, I understand, was in command. It began to crumble away. The Earl of Stafford, one account says he was killed in this arrow storm, and the right flank simply melt away and rob the king's baggage train as they go. Consequently, the left flank under the Earl of Douglas there actually advance and chase off some of these men. So even before the battle has truly got underway, there is a little bit of chaos. Now, Henry Hotspur, who commands the centre, the Earl of Worcester is on their right. He sees an opportunity. Go for the king, because they can see the king commanding his own centre. Go for him. So I've changed the model around. You see, what Henry Hotspur decided to do is make an all-out charge. Part of his army, his left flank, has disintegrated a little bit in pursuit of the royalists who run away. So he thinks that if they can advance, charge straight into the centre and kill the king, kill Henry IV, it will be a victory. The battle will be over. So he charges, and he leaves a swathe of dead with his 30 knights charging forward. Then, of course, the rest of his men are all being sucked into this action. Now, I've got an original quote here, and it goes as follows. When Sir Henry Percy saw his men fast slain, he pressed into the battle with 30 men and made a lane in the middle of the host, where he came to the king's banner, and there he slew the Earl of Stafford and Sir Thomas Blount, the king's standard-bearer, and others. And at last he was beset about and slain. I've got the rebel forces charging into the centre of the king's army. We have a real hand-to-hand melee here. We also have the Earl of Douglas there. He is in the centre because some accounts say that it was him who killed Thomas Blount. But the fact is, somewhere around here, Henry Hotspur is actually killed. One account is he raised his visor and an arrow went straight through his face. Others that he was simply overwhelmed. But the enemy don't know he's dead. What happens next is a brilliant counter move by the Prince of Wales. He had advisors there. The Earl of Warwick was amongst them. Now they're going to outflank the enemy. They have seen a chance. They're going to charge, but then something happens. What's happened is, as Archibald Douglas and Henry Hotspur have gone for the king's life, the young Prince of Wales, together with his advisors, have swung the royalist left flank, Henry IV's left flank, and they're outflanking the rebel army, Henry Hotspur. Nobody knows at this stage that Hotspur is dead, but unfortunately, the young prince receives a stray arrow straight to the face. It's at this crucial moment that he is wounded, but he doesn't leave the field. Apparently he breaks the arrow, or the arrow is broken, and he continues to lead his troops. How inspiring is that? And they actually outflank the rebel army, Hotspur's army, and it's at this moment that the king himself gives up the shout. Percy is dead. Percy is dead. As soon as that ripples through the rebel army, they have no cause to fight for. It disintegrates. There will be a pursuit, and there will be many, many men slain as they try to leave the field. But it's almost dusk, and the king gives out the cry, "Stop killing my countrymen." Because that's the sad thing about the Battle of Shrewsbury. For the most part, it was Englishmen killing Englishmen. Well, I hope you enjoyed our little video there, the Battle of Shrewsbury. If you did, like, share and subscribe. And don't forget to turn on the all notification buttons. That's great. But before I go, a quick mention to some of our Patreon members: Alex Simba Wilson, Ruben Giersima. If I haven't pronounced that right, you got to let me know. And Marilyn Hill. Hey guys, thanks a million. Bye for now.